The shrill ring of the phone echoed through the silence, a piercing sound that shattered the stillness of the night. It cut through the smoke-filled room, where shadows danced on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. Detective Calloway, a weary veteran of Chicago PD, picked up the receiver. His eyes, heavy with the weight of countless sleepless nights, flickered with a hint of curiosity and dread. "Calloway," he growled, his voice thick with fatigue and a touch of irritation. He had been expecting this call, but that didn't make it any easier. The voice on the other end spoke, each word sending a chill down his spine. "Triple homicide," it said, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence, all connected to the notorious Montoya cartel. The name alone was enough to make even the bravest officers shudder. Calloway hung up, a grim understanding settling in his gut. This was no ordinary case. It was a declaration of war. This was just the beginning. The city, already teetering on the edge, was about to plunge into chaos. The air hung heavy with the stench of blood and fear as Calloway surveyed the scene. The metallic scent of blood mixed with the damp, musty odor of the warehouse. 3 bodies, sprawled on the floor of a dingy warehouse, lay in grotesque positions, their lifeless eyes staring into the void. Each bore the mark of a swift, brutal execution. No struggle, no mercy. The precision of the killings was chilling. Whoever did this was sending a message written in blood and vengeance, meant to instill fear and assert dominance. The walls were splattered with blood, a macabre canvas of violence and retribution. It was clear that this was more than just a crime. It was a statement. Calloway knelt beside the body of the first victim, his eyes scanning the lifeless face. He tried to piece together the final moments of the man's life. He'd seen death before, but there was something different about this. The brutality was almost personal, as if the killer had a vendetta. The sheer brutality, the cold precision, spoke of a rage that ran deeper than any gang rivalry. This wasn't just business, it was personal. The Montoya cartel was known for its ruthlessness, but this was on another level. Calloway knew that this was just the beginning of a long and bloody battle. The city of Chicago was about to become a war zone, and he was right in the middle of it. He looked at the map on the wall, marked with red pins indicating recent cartel activity. Each pin represented a life lost, a family shattered. Calloway gathered his team, their faces mirroring his own grim determination. They knew the stakes were high and failure was not an option. He reviewed the case files, each photo and note a piece of the puzzle. The Montoya cartel was meticulous, leaving little to chance. As he drove through the city, the weight of the task ahead pressed down on him. The streets, once familiar, now seemed fraught with danger. Arriving at the crime scene, the flashing lights of the police cars illuminated the darkness, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at him. He meticulously examined the evidence, each piece a potential clue that could lead them to the killers. The pressure was immense, but Calloway thrived under it. He stared at the photo of a suspect, the face of a man who had become his obsession. He vowed to bring him to justice, no matter the cost. As he walked away from the crime scene, his resolve hardened. This was his city, and he would not let it fall into the hands of monsters. The battle had just begun, and Calloway was ready to fight. Michael Carter stared at the photograph in his trembling hand. The edges of the picture were worn, a testament to how often he had held it, seeking solace in the image of his beloved daughter. His daughter Lily, her smile radiant, her eyes filled with a light that had been snuffed out too soon. The photograph captured her essence, a moment frozen in time, a stark contrast to the cold reality of her absence. A sob ripped through him, echoing in the silence of his empty apartment. The walls seemed to close in, the weight of his grief pressing down on him, suffocating him. Every corner of the apartment held memories of Lily, making her absence even more palpable. Lily, his everything, was gone. The vibrant laughter, the shared moments, the dreams for the future, all shattered in an instant. The void she left behind was vast and unending. Murdered by the Montoya cartel, her life reduced to a statistic in the city's endless cycle of violence. The news headlines were a cruel reminder of the brutality that had stolen her away, turning her into just another victim in a long list of tragedies. The justice system had failed her. The courtroom, which should have been a place of justice, felt like a mockery. The gavel's strike, meant to symbolize order, now felt like a death knell for any hope of retribution. A plea deal, a slap on the wrist. The legal jargon and negotiations had reduced her life to a bargaining chip, a mere inconvenience in the grand scheme of things. The animals who took Lily were back on the streets, free to prey on the innocent. Their freedom was a constant reminder of the injustice, a knife twisted in the wound of his loss. Rage, raw and consuming, began to burn away at Michael's grief. The sorrow that had once paralyzed him was now fuel for a fire that demanded action, demanded justice. He would not let her death be in vain. Determination etched itself into his features, a resolve that hardened with each passing day. He would become the force that the justice system had failed to be. He would become her avenger, the instrument of her justice. Every shot fired, every punch thrown was a step closer to avenging Lily, to making sure her killers paid for their crimes. The world around him faded, replaced by a singular purpose. The noise of everyday life became a distant hum, overshadowed by the clarity of his mission. He sold his possessions, liquidated his assets. Every item sold was a step further from his old life, a life that no longer held meaning without Lily. Everything he had was channeled into his transformation. Weapons training, surveillance. He immersed himself in a world he had never known, driven by a need that went beyond mere revenge. He delved into the city's underbelly, learning the cartel's movements, their routines, their weaknesses. The dark alleyways and shadowy figures became his new reality, a labyrinth he navigated with growing expertise. He would become a ghost, a whisper of vengeance in the night. His presence would be felt but never seen, a phantom that haunted the cartel, bringing with him the promise of retribution. As he stood on the rooftop, looking over the city that had taken so much from him, he made a silent vow. He would not rest until every last member of the Montoya cartel paid for what they had done. The city lights below flickered like the dying embers of his old life, but within him burned a new fire, one that would not be extinguished until justice was served. With one last look at the photograph of Lily, he tucked it into his pocket, close to his heart. He walked away into the night, a man transformed, a father on a mission. The darkness embraced him, but he was no longer afraid. He had become the darkness, a force of vengeance that would stop at nothing to honor his daughter's memory. The man Michael Carter had been was gone, consumed by the fires of his grief and rage. Once a loving husband and father, his life had been shattered by a brutal act of violence that took away everything he held dear. The pain was unbearable, the loss immeasurable. He had tried to find solace in the law, but justice had eluded him. The system had failed, and in its failure, it had forged something new within him. In his place stood something cold, calculating, and utterly lethal. No longer was he the man who once smiled and laughed with his family. Now, he was a force of nature, driven by a singular purpose. His eyes, once filled with warmth, now held only the icy resolve of a man who had nothing left to lose. He had become a hunter, and the city was his hunting ground. He donned a black tactical vest, a symbol of his transformation, a stark reminder of his purpose. Each strap, each buckle, meticulously adjusted, was a part of his new identity. The vest was more than just protection. It was a declaration. It told the world that he was ready for war, that he was prepared to do whatever it took to bring his own brand of justice. The Punisher, they would call him. The Punisher, they would call him. A name whispered in fear, a legend born from the ashes of his former life. He moved through the city like a ghost, unseen and unheard until it was too late. Criminals who once felt untouchable now looked over their shoulders, haunted by the specter of retribution. The Punisher was not just a man. He was a symbol of the vengeance that awaited those who preyed on the innocent. His first target, Marco the Viper Vargas, a lieutenant in the Montoya cartel, known for his brutality and taste for torture. Vargas was a man who thrived on fear, who enjoyed the suffering of others. He was a monster in human form, and Michael had made it his mission to put an end to his reign of terror. The Punisher had no mercy for men like Vargas, no compassion for those who inflicted pain for pleasure. Michael had tracked Vargas to a seedy nightclub, watching his every move. He had spent weeks gathering information, learning Vargas's routines, his habits, his weaknesses. The nightclub was a den of iniquity, a place where the dregs of society gathered to indulge in their vices. It was the perfect hunting ground for the Punisher, a place where he could strike without warning and disappear into the night. He moved like a phantom, a predator stalking his prey. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. He had become a master of stealth, able to blend into the shadows and strike with deadly efficiency. The nightclub's thumping music and flashing lights provided the perfect cover for his approach. He was a ghost, a shadow, a harbinger of doom for those who crossed his path. His heart pounded in his chest, a drumbeat of vengeance. Each beat was a reminder of why he was there, of the family he had lost, of the justice he sought. His fists clenched with determination, his eyes focused and unyielding. There was no room for doubt, no space for hesitation. He was the Punisher, and he would not rest until his mission was complete. As Vargas stumbled out of the club, drunk and oblivious, Michael struck. The moment had come, the culmination of weeks of planning and preparation. Vargas was vulnerable, his senses dulled by alcohol. He never saw the Punisher coming, never had a chance to react. It was over in an instant, a swift and silent execution. One clean shot, precise and silent. The silenced pistol ensured that no one would hear, that no one would come running. The muzzle flash was brief, a fleeting burst of light in the darkness. The bullet found its mark, ending Vargas's life in a heartbeat. It was a fitting end for a man who had caused so much pain and suffering. Vargas crumpled to the ground, his reign of terror over. The look of shock on his face was frozen in death, a testament to the swiftness of the Punisher's justice. The pavement was stained with his blood, a stark reminder of the price of cruelty. The city had one less monster to fear, one less predator to prey on the innocent. In the distance, a siren wailed. The authorities would arrive soon, but they would find no trace of the Punisher. He was a ghost, a phantom that melted into the night. The siren's wail was a song of futility, a reminder that the city's true protector operated outside the bounds of the law. Michael was already gone, melting back into the shadows, leaving behind a city whispering his name in fear. The Punisher had struck and the message was clear. Justice would be served, no matter the cost. The city would never be the same, forever changed by the presence of a man who had become more than just a vigilante. He was a legend, a myth, a force of nature that criminals would come to dread. The news of Vargas's death sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. The police, baffled by the professional execution, launched a full-scale investigation. But Michael was always one step ahead, a phantom moving through the city's arteries. Each kill was a carefully orchestrated masterpiece, a public display of retribution. He targeted the cartel's operations, their finances, their supply chains. He became a one-man wrecking crew, dismantling their empire brick by bloody brick. Each death brought him a step closer to his ultimate goal, Victor Montoya, the cartel's elusive kingpin. With each life taken, Michael felt a strange mix of guilt and satisfaction. He knew what he was doing was wrong, yet he couldn't stop. Lily's face, forever frozen in his memory, fueled his relentless pursuit of justice. He had become both judge and jury, meting out his own brand of righteous punishment. Word on the street was that the Punisher was more myth than man. A boogeyman whispered about in hushed tones. But Detective Calloway knew better. He saw the pattern in the killings, the methodical precision, the unwavering focus on the Montoya cartel. This was no ghost story. This was personal. Calloway found himself strangely sympathetic to the Punisher's cause. He had seen the cartel's brutality firsthand, the lives they destroyed, the fear they instilled. But he was a cop, sworn to uphold the law, not personal vendettas. He had to stop this vigilante, even if it meant protecting a monster like Montoya. The pressure mounted with each passing day. The mayor, the media, even his own department were clamoring for answers. Calloway knew he was chasing a ghost. A man driven by a grief so profound it had transformed him into a weapon. He feared what would happen when that weapon finally found its target.